WADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Porto Novo. Good afternoon and thank you for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting at 94.9 FM and world over on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. First, the top stories. Senegalese President Diomaye Faye to meet lawmakers over the scrapping of two institutions. A new Afrobarometer report says some Gambian citizens want a new constitution but doubt commitment of political parties.
Gambians agree or strongly agree that the rejected 2020 constitution should be reintroduced to the National Assembly for amendment.
I would only prefer the 2020 draft constitution untouched by the president or his cabinet.
Authorities in Nigeria say floods killed at least 49, displaced over 41,000 people.
We have seen the extent of colossal damage that the water has brought on our people. There have been a lot of infrastructural destruction.
About 10 communities are affected.
And Ghana's government announces immediate ban on exportation of grains in response to dry spell in parts of the country. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us. Let's begin from home here in Senegal, as President Diomaye Faye will meet lawmakers at the National Assembly on Thursday to examine a bill aimed at abolishing the High Council of Territorial Communities and the Economic, Social and Environmental Council as part of his institutional reform program. President Diomaye Faye, who came to power in March, has taken a new step in his institutional reform program. Christopher Ticho has more details in this report.
According to the presidency, this session aims to examine a bill amending the constitution, in particular, the abolition of two major institutions, the High Council of Territorial Communities HCCT and the Economic, Social and Environmental Council CESE, created in 2016 under the presidency of Macky Sall. Between 2012 and 2024, the HCCT is a consultative institution whose mission is to strengthen the participation of local authorities in the development and management of public affairs, while the Social and Environmental Council, a consultative assembly, has existed since Senegal's independence under the name of Economic and Social Council, CSE. The environmental dimension was added to its title in 2012, a few months after Macky Sall came to power, replacing Abdoulaye Wade from 2000 to 2012. Its mission is to advise the government on economic, social and environmental issues. It is composed of representatives from various sectors of civil society and economic world. The elimination of these two institutions was one of President Faye's campaign promises, which he considers costly and ineffective. The decision is part of a broader desire to rationalize state institutions and reduce public spending. The country's Minister Council and spokesperson OSIWA specifies that this convocation of the National Assembly is done in accordance with Article 63 of the Constitution.
Christopher Teacher reporting there. Staying in Senegal, the United States government has announced that it is providing more than $64 million to address migration trends in sub-Saharan Africa. This disclosure was made by Julieta Valls-Noyes, the U.S. State Department's Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of Population, Refugees and Migration. The funding includes support for the UN Refugee Agency, other international organizations and NGO partners. As Augustine Cooley reports, the funding will provide humanitarian assistance to displaced persons, refugees and host communities across the continent.
According to Julieta Valls-Noyes, this announcement brings the total U.S. humanitarian assistance in sub-Saharan Africa to more than $3.8 billion in 2024. The support underscores the United States' ongoing commitment to humanitarian crisis response in the region, says the top U.S. diplomat.
I am proud to announce that the United States, through the Bureau of Population, Refugees and Migration, is providing more than $64 million in additional humanitarian assistance in sub-Saharan Africa.
In addition, the U.S. State Department's Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of Population, Refugees and Migration applauds the great efforts of the government and people of Senegal and other countries to welcome refugees, returnees, and internally displaced persons.
The Senegalese government's example of incorporating refugees into national social and health services, for example, has played a key role in enhancing stability in the region. migration. We encourage other governments to collaborate with the international community on sustainable solutions that benefit both refugees and their host communities.
Meanwhile, Xavier Creech, Deputy Director of the UNHCR's Regional Bureau for West and Central Africa, welcomes the additional funding by the U.S. government.
I would thank you, including for this announcement, but for the support we have been receiving, UNHCR, but also many partners of UNHCR that we work with, for the support we have been seeing, the continuous support we have been seeing from PRM, but beyond PRM, from the U.S. government. It's a region which has faced a very steady increase in the number of forcibly displaced people.
There are over 40 million forcibly displaced people in Africa, according to the African Center for Strategic Studies, with an additional 3.2 million Africans displaced due to conflict over the past year.
Augustine Kohli filed a report in neighboring the Gambia. A majority of the citizens say the country needs a new constitution, according to the latest Afrobarometer survey, but many doubt the commitment of political parties to the process. The survey findings from April-May 2024 shows that 2/3 of the Gambians think the rejected 2020 constitution should be reintroduced to the National Assembly for amendment, as they believe the parliament was wrong in rejecting it. This comes amid the reintroduction of the draft constitution, which was gazetted by President Barrow-led government. WDL's Banjul correspondent Sankli Janko has more details in this report.
The survey, which was conducted from April to May 2024, showed the overwhelming majority of Gambians support the move to reintroduce the draft constitution rejected in 2020. The survey findings were revealed by Said Matijau, the co-founder and executive director of Center for Research and Policy Development, the implementing partner of Afrobarometer.
7 out of 10 Gambians, 71% express support for a new national constitution, while a quarter, 24% say there is no need for a new constitution. And we also seen that 2/3, that is almost 7 out of 10 Gambians agree or strongly agree that the rejected 2020 constitution should be reintroduced to the National Assembly for amendment. Only 3 in 10, 29% say the National Assembly was right to reject the draft constitution.
Among key amendments that citizens are advocating in a reintroduced constitution is the introduction of presidential term limits, preferably 2 terms, a provision absent from the current 1997 constitution. Almost 9 out of 10 citizens, 86%, favor 2-term limit on president. Meanwhile, WDR sought the thoughts of Gambians on the introduction of a new constitution for the country.
I would only prefer the 2020 draft constitution untouched by the president or his cabinet.
I'm so much in support of the draft constitution to be brought back to the National Assembly to begin the process again after the first failure.
The current 1997 constitution, inherited from the Yahya Jammeh regime, has long been a source of contention. Critics argue it lacks the necessary reforms to address contemporary issues and ensure a more democratic and equitable governance structure. Opinions are, however, divided on the new gazetted draft constitution after the government made amendments to certain sections of the new document. Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Sankuli Janki reporting from Banjul.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
The Malian army says it successfully hit 2 all-terrain vehicles belonging to terrorists in the Anefis area on the road to Tassalit in the Kidal region. In a press release late Monday, the General Staff stressed that the farmers spotted 2 all-terrain vehicles loaded with war materials belonging to armed terrorist groups approximately 80 kilometers north of the town of Anefis on the Tassalit road. It added that after long surveillance, these vehicles were destroyed with precision and 6 terrorists were neutralized. Corroborating this development, spokesperson for the Strategic Framework for the Defense of the People of Azawad, Mohammed El Maloud Ramadan, informed on Monday that in Tijmat in the Kidal region, 2 of its vehicles were the target of a drone strike by the Malian army, killing 7 of the crew. Recall, for no more than a decade, Mali has been facing terrorist attacks and community conflicts. Now let's head to Nigeria, where the National Emergency Management Authority, NEMA, said on Monday that at least 49 people have been killed and thousands displaced in the country after heavy rains caused flooding in the northeast of the country. Recall in 2022, Nigeria experienced its worst flood in more than a decade, which killed more than 600 people, displaced around 1.4 million, and destroyed 440,000 hectares of farmland. Ogeberika completes the story.
According to the agency in Jigawa State in the northwestern region, no fewer than 6 people have lost their lives, while over 10,000 others in 12 communities were displaced following heavy downpour that lasted for several hours in Matagali local government area of the state. Professor Khalid Tapwa Faruta is the Adamawa State Deputy Governor.
We're here to see our people. We have seen the extent of colossal damage that the water has brought on our people. But there have been a lot of infrastructural destruction. We've seen the bridges through which we came in. We have also seen houses. Families are exposed. Families have no places to lay their heads. We are asking the chairman and other people from this area to ensure that these people are taken over to places that are safe. They should be moved to camps where they can be safe for now, before the government will know what next to do. But even as we are here today, we came with some palliatives to ensure that at least food items, non-food items for water treatment, we all came with them, and we are moving to the camp where we are flagging off to share to the 8 camps that we have on behalf of this local government.
In his assessment of the Matagali local government flood, the head of operations Yola Office of the National Emergency Management Agency, Mr. Ayuba Laden, said over 10,000 people were displaced and 10 others injured during the sad incident.
And you could see about 10 communities are affected. And we went around with Her Excellency, the Deputy Governor, and from all indications, really, we have to also talk to the people, especially those who are within this area, to move to safer ground, and also advise them that people should move out of this area because you could see that this is waterways.
Meanwhile, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET, has issued a warning alert to 6 northern states to prepare for severe thunderstorms accompanied by strong winds and heavy rainfall in the coming days.
Ogeberika filed that report. In this island state of Burkina Faso, former Minister Vincent Dabilgo has been sentenced on appeal to 6 years in prison and fined over 3 billion CFA francs. That's about $5 million. The verdict was delivered on Monday following his initial sentencing on August 17, 2023 to 7 years in prison. The court also ordered the suspension of his party, the New Time for Democracy. Details from Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kaba and voiced by Abdullah Hassan.
The Ouagadougou Court of Appeal partially upheld the verdict of the Ouaga 1 High Court dated August 17, 2023. Former Transport Minister Vincent Dabilgo was sentenced to 11 years in prison, 6 of which are to be served, and fined 3 billion CFA francs. Initially, he had been sentenced to 11 years with 7 to be served and the same fine. The court also ordered the confiscation of his movable and immovable property up to the amount embezzled and the suspension of his party, the New Time for Democracy (NTD), for 5 years. In its August 17, 2022 ruling, the Ouaga 1 High Court also imposed a 5-year ban on Dabilgo's eligibility for public office, a provision confirmed on appeal this Monday, August 26. It should be noted that this former transport minister under Roch Kabore's regime is being prosecuted for covert political party financing, embezzlement of public funds, and money laundering.
That was a report filed in by our Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kaba and voiced by Abdullah Hassan. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Senegalese President Diomaye Faye to meet lawmakers over the scrapping of 2 institutions. A new Afrobarometer report says some Gambian citizens want a new constitution but doubt commitment of political parties. Authorities in Nigeria says floods killed at least 49, displaced over 41,000 people. And still ahead in the news, Ghana's government announces immediate ban on exportation of grains in response to dry spell in parts of the country. We don't have the guest interview segment, a press review, and sports news. Please stay with us.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
Well, don't forget you can listen to us live on wadr.org and also follow our streaming on YouTube and Facebook. Let's head now to Ghana, where the government has announced the immediate ban on the export of key grains, including maize, rice and soybeans, due to an ongoing dry spell that has devastated agricultural production in 8 regions. At a press conference in Accra on Monday, addressed by the Minister of Agriculture, Brian Achempong, the Minister of Finance, Dr. Amin Adam, and the Minister of Defense, Dominic Nitiwul, the government indicated that the latest measure announces to ensure food security within the country. From Accra, WDR's Nadide Tete reports.
According to Ghana's Minister for Food and Agriculture, Brian Champong, farmers in 8 regions have been affected by drought, sparking widespread concerns about food security and the livelihood of thousands of farmers. The affected regions are Bono, Bono East, Oti, Northern, Northeast, Savannah, Upper East and Upper West regions, with farmers incurring losses of approximately 3.5 billion Ghana cedis in investment. Speaking at a press conference on Monday, August 26, Brian Champong further stated that these farmers face a potential revenue loss of 10.4 billion Ghana cedis. He also announced why the ban on the exportation of grains was necessary.
This measure is essential to ensure the availability of these critical crops on the domestic market. With the projected shortfall in grain supply, government will tap into the ECOWAS grain reserve and partner with the private sector to bridge the gap.
As part of measures to mitigate the impact of the crisis on farmers, Minister for Finance Dr. Mohamed Amin Adam announced that the government has allocated 8 billion Ghana cedis to cushion the farmers affected by the dry spell.
From the budget side, we have been able to secure up to $160 million. That's about 2.5 billion Ghana cedis. This is largely coming from the contingency fund, which our constitution established.
President of the Peasant Farmers Association, Bismarck Owusu-Norte, while welcoming the support to be provided the affected farmers, expressed concern over the failure of government to consult the farmers ahead of the decision to ban the export of grains.
I think that this particular approach is an approach that was not inclusive. It didn't take on board the views and concerns and the possible challenges that this might have on farmers.
For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
In Liberia, ahead of the official launch of the country's electronic procurement system, the Public Procurement and Concession Commission has conducted an intensive training of trainers program for more than 50 government employees, particularly procurement officers. Dubbed the e-GP system, the official launch slated for early September this year will thereby transition the country from the old age manual procurement system to a fully functional digital procurement platform. WDR's Monrovia correspondent Darlington Popper has a report.
The training was conducted with support from the World Bank and other development partners, intended to enhance transparency and accountability within Liberia's procurement processes. Public Procurement and Concession Commission Executive Director Bogas Carl Johnson said discussions are on the way with the Liberia Chambers of Commerce to organize training for local businesses, helping them to register and navigate the new system to bid on government contracts.
Most of the things, I don't know government get a contract, what can do this, but for me, since I begin PPCD boss, I've been forced on the procurement plan, the SBA, that Liberian businesses should benefit.
Gladys Sinerio, Senior Public Specialist at the World Bank, praised the training's success and its role in digitizing public procurement in Liberia.
The World Bank looks forward to the successful implementation of the system and its positive impact on public procurement in Liberia.
For these participants, they are grateful for such a training, promising to fully utilize it in the discharge of their duties.
We also want to say thank you to the facilitators, and we hope the program will last.
It is our prayer hope as we leave from here, we actualize and practice what we are being taught today.
The project is valued at over $5 million United States dollars and will run from now to 2026. For the Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Popper in Monrovia.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Well, let's remain in Monrovia with Darlington Popper for the newspaper review.
For today's edition of Press Review, we have the Heritage newspaper, the Afrique newspaper, and the In-Profile daily newspaper. We begin the review process with the Heritage newspaper. Ex-AG Molu critiques President Boakai's anti-corruption efforts. The former Auditor General John Molu. World Bank warns Liberia of impeding disbursement suspension over $2.4 million debt. Amid rousing political tensions, ECOWAS delegation in town. And this is an interesting development here. We hope that the ECOWAS intervention will be able to ease the political tension currently evolving in the country. On the back page of the Heritage newspaper, Stand condemns police raid on CDC's headquarters, calls for dialogue and accountability. Several CDC protesters jailed at the Monrovia Central Prison. Senator Maggie run to Supreme Court relating to LACC's investigation. From the Heritage newspaper, the Afrique Daily is next. Major drug burst in Senegal. We see the photograph of this foreign national with a huge consignment of illicit drug, including cocaine and heroin, on the front page of the Afrique Daily newspaper. Representative Koga expresses disappointment in VP Kun. Unknowing men target SETI company on the back page of this paper quickly. Don't fight Kimia, John S. Molu urges Boakai. China Union fulfills social responsibilities, but what? Try to get a copy of this paper and read more. PPCC conducts trainers training on e-procurement. Lacra boss urges farmer to prioritize cocoa planting. ZNC donates food and non-food items to MIA. CBA refused a scheme, allegations by Portuguese national. From the Afrique Daily newspaper, we move now to our last, which happens to be the In-Profile daily newspaper. Rousing ocean tides threaten Monrovia's coastal communities. Tragic incident kills 3 Burkinabe cocoa farmers. CDC protesters sent to prison for alleged attempted murder. Flag Day orator wants legislators' salary slash. On the back page of the In-Profile daily newspaper, Councillor Gongo proposes constitutional legal reform against corruption. On that note, Vanessa would love to conclude today's edition of Press Review, but before we go, these are the newspapers we actually followed on today's edition. We followed the Heritage newspaper, the Afrique Daily newspaper, and the In-Profile daily newspaper was our last stop. On that note, thank you so much for following Press Review, and bye-bye.
Many thanks, Denison Popper there in Monrovia with the newspaper review.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, let's take you back to the Gambia in this guest interview segment as we throw more light to the Afrobarometer report on the draft constitution. We told you that from the survey, a large number of the population, amid skepticism, want a new constitution. Well, we caught up with Said Matujo, who is a lecturer in political science and Afrobarometer project director for the Center for Research and Policy Development, as he talks about some of the contentious issues in the draft constitution.
We included some questions that seek citizens' opinions on the constitutional process, but also whether the constitution should go back to parliament, and even whether the country needs a new constitution, as well as the issues of term limit. This study was done in April and May 2024. At the time of the release, government already gazetted a draft 2024 constitution. So some of our findings basically reflected citizens' view in terms of the need for a new constitution, but also in terms of the demand for the 2020 draft, which was rejected by Parliament, to be reintroduced for amendment. Perhaps now what is creating the controversy is the process that's been adopted by Cabinet, as many people are complaining that it has not been consultative enough.
The issue that seems to be of concern and that is raising debate among the citizen is the term limit issue. Peradventure, this draft constitution goes through. Where does it place the current administration of President Adama Barrow?
But I think one of the major factors that led to the rejection of the 2020 draft was what the NPP then, or President Barrow's scam, considered as the retroactive clause, which included President Barrow's first term in office, that is from 2017 to 2021. and so this was not welcomed by the cabinet and President Barrow supporters in Parliament, and so many people believe that this was one of the main reasons why the draft was rejected. But of course, this new draft did address that to an extent, but of course, it's creating a debate in terms of whether these 2 terms of President Barrow are included as the final. So it's also creating a similar controversy. But I think, given that this is more like a new, we'll be able to understand more deeply in terms of the various legal analysis that might be coming our way. But the reality is that Gambians want term limit. And I think with Afrobarometer data, we have shown from 2018 to 2024 that almost 9 in 10 Gambians want term limit of 2 5-year terms for the president, and even from 2018 it was 85%, and in 2024 is 86%. So that shows also very strong support for this issue. But of course, citizens are also worried that political leaders are not committed. But the issue is also the problematic 1997 constitution that we are dealing with and trying to repeal has no term limit. So there's some sort of a option that we have to make here, and I think that's why people are saying if the bill goes to the Parliament, that will help definitely to address some of the controversial issues.
Indeed. That was Said Matijo, a lecturer in political science and Afrobarometer project director for the Center for Research and Policy Development. All right, let's join Sankli Janko for sports news.
Hello out there, warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Nigeria have announced the appointment of former Stuttgart Bulls Bruno Labbadia as the new head coach of the national male football team, the Super Eagles, ahead of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifying campaign. The appointment was confirmed after the 58-year-old German was interviewed by the Nigeria Football Federation, NFF, on Thursday. The German Labbadia's appointment came after talks with Swede Jean Andersen and Frenchman Hervé Renard collapsed. In a statement, NFF General Secretary Mohamed Sanusi said the NFF has approved the recommendation of its Technical and Development Subcommittee to appoint Mr. Bruno Labbadia as the head coach of the Super Eagles. The appointment is with immediate effect, the statement reads. Labbadia is expected to oversee his first game in charge when Nigeria take on Rwanda in the Nations Cup qualifier in Oyo on 7 September before the return leg 3 days later. And Senegal are set to announce a squad for the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations double-legged qualifiers against Burkina Faso. Coach Aliou Cissé will unveil the 25-man squad before Friday. Star player Sadio Mane, who missed their last outing, is expected to return to the folds. The 2021 champions will take on Burkina Faso on Friday, 6 September at the Diamniadio Stadium before traveling to Ouagadougou for the return leg 3 days later. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
And that's it on this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Christian Mukudi and Maudo Joe for the technical support. Do connect with us on all of our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, WADR News, and Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio, English service. I am Emo Edit. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.